The armory was quiet in the early morning light, dust motes floating through the beams. As she knelt on the floor, carefully disassembling her rifle, her hands moving with practiced precision, every motion smooth and deliberate, as if she had done it 1,000 times before, and though the other recruits hurried past unaware of her presence, she remained focused, intent on the task at hand, unaware that eyes were beginning to drift toward her. From the doorway at the far end of the room, her sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms that were strong and scarred, faint lines etched into her skin like a map of battles fought and victories won, yet to anyone else they might have seemed like small, insignificant marks, nothing to warn of the storm that had shaped the woman beneath the calm exterior. She worked, methodically cleaning each component, wiping away the residue of oil and dust, her breath even and steady, as if each motion grounded her to the present moment. The general had arrived unnoticed, his boots silent. Against the concrete floor, a figure who carried the weight of authority and a lifetime of seeing things that others could not yet. Today, something about the room pulled his attention toward the lone recruit on the floor, her focus absolute, her posture disciplined and controlled, a contrast to the nervous energy that filled the rest of the armory. As he stepped closer, the light shifted across her exposed forearms, catching the faint glint of scars etched into her skin, and for a moment the general froze, his mind racing through memories of briefings, missions, intelligence reports, and stories he had heard about one operative in particular, someone whose skill and bravery had become the stuff of legend. And now here she was, sitting quietly, cleaning her weapon like any other recruit, while carrying the evidence of a life. Most could not even imagine the recruits nearby were oblivious to the sudden change in the atmosphere, their chatter and footsteps, creating a background hum that faded as the general's presence pressed into the room, and the air seemed to thicken heavy with expectation and the long-spoken question of who she truly was. As she methodically reassembled her rifle, her eyes focused on the parts in her hands, unaware that her world was about to shift with the realization that she had been seen and recognized, he took another step forward, his gaze fixed on the faint but unmistakable scars that told a story of missions in deserts, oceans, jungles, operations that tested the limits of endurance, courage, and human survival. And in that instant, a tension coiled in the room, so tight that even the faint click of the rifle pieces snapping together sounded like thunder in the silence. As every recruit felt the weight of the moment pressing down upon them, her movements did not falter. She finished the assembly of her weapon, sliding the magazine into place and running a quick check, as if nothing had happened, as if the quiet act of cleaning a rifle in an empty armory was all there was to her life. And yet the general's mind raced, trying to reconcile the image of the calm, disciplined recruit before him with the image of the operative who had haunted briefings and stories. For years, the woman who had survived situations he had only ever read about, the faint flicker of awareness crossed her face, a small tightening around the eyes, as if she had sensed the shift in the room and the weight of a stare that carried far more recognition than she was used to feeling. Yet she did not look up. She continued her work, letting the silence stretch between them, each second building a quiet suspense that vibrated in the air like a wire pulled taut, waiting for the inevitable spark that would break it. The general took a slow step closer, his boots echoing softly, and he paused, watching her every motion, noting the subtle tension in her muscles, the ease of her hands, the calm that belied the stories etched into her skin. And for a moment he considered saying something, breaking the spell, but he realized that words could never capture the gravity of what he had just seen, and that perhaps the lesson was already unfolding silently across the room outside the circle of light. The other recruits moved on with their routines, unaware that they had stepped into a moment that would linger in memory, a moment that carried a story of bravery, survival, and a past most could not fathom. And as she reached for a cleaning cloth, a shadow passed across her arm, catching the light and glinting off a deeper scar, a mark that told the general more than any briefing could. And in That instant, he knew he had to pause and understand the woman before he manned, as she stood finally. Sliding the rifle into its case, the silence held like a drawn breath, the tension in the room. Waiting to release, waiting to explode into recognition questions, and perhaps even fear for the recruits who had yet to see. What lay beneath the calm and controlled exterior of the woman who had just been cleaning her weapon, unaware that she had already commanded the attention of one of the highest-ranking officers in the building, and that the next moment would change everything in ways they accord. They accord the ways, while no ways. And ways they could not yet imagine. The general stood frozen, his eyes tracing the lines on her arms. Each scar a silent testament to missions executed with precision and courage in places few could even imagine, and though the recruits continued their tasks oblivious to the tension, the weight of recognition pressed down on the room like a heavy fog, she finally glanced up, her eyes meeting his, a calm, steady gaze that betrayed nothing yet carried the unmistakable aura of someone who had faced death more times than most could count, and in that moment the general realized that the woman before him was not a mere recruit but a warrior shaped by trials far beyond the drills and routines of this armory. Recruits sensed the shift, the sudden hush that fell over the room, the almost electric tension that made them pause mid-step, mid-breath, as if the very air had thickened around the two of them, and though no one spoke a single word, the atmosphere vibrated with the unspoken question of who she truly was and what stories lay hidden beneath the calm exterior. The general took another careful step forward, his mind racing through briefings, intelligence reports, and tales he had only ever heard whispered in closed circles, stories of a SEAL operative whose courage and skill were the stuff of legend, and now here she was, standing before him, casually cleaning her weapon as if the danger and heroics of the past were nothing more than distant memories. Her hands moved deliberately, adjusting the strap on her rifle, checking the chamber with a precision born of countless hours of training and combat, and though she appeared completely ordinary, every detail screamed of experience, from the subtle muscle control in her arms to the quiet confidence in the set of her shoulders, and the general felt a shiver run down his spine, knowing that he had just witnessed someone whose reputation had preceded her, even if no one here had ever recognized. Ith wanted to speak, to ask questions, to acknowledge what he had seen, yet he realized words were insufficient. The silence held more meaning than anything he could say as he studied the marks that mapped the story of a life lived at the edge of danger, and every scar told a chapter of endurance, sacrifice, and survival. And though the recruit continued her work as if nothing had happened, the weight of her presence filled the room completely. The other recruits watched from the edges, unaware of the storm brewing silently. In the center of the armory, the tension winding tighter with each passing second, as the general struggled to reconcile the calm, disciplined woman before him with the legendary operative, whose exploits were known only to a select few. And in that pause, the room seemed to stretch time into a thin wire pulled taut, ready to snap. Then a small movement from her hands, a precise adjustment, a practiced flick of the wrist brought the rifle to a ready position, and every recruit felt the air shift. The moment suspended between past and present, between ordinary and extraordinary, and the general realized fully the danger, the skill, and the history carried in the arms of this woman, who had simply been cleaning her weapon, unaware that she had already commanded the attention of everyone in the room. Finally, she stepped back, placing the rifle into its case, her posture relaxed yet undeniably controlled, and the general swallowed hard, the recognition settling into a tense quiet inside him. The recruits sensing that they had witnessed something remarkable, something that would linger in memory far beyond today's training. And as she turned toward the exit, her eyes briefly meeting his, the room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the acknowledgement that had not yet been spoken, and for a moment the world felt suspended on the edge of discovery. And as she left the armory, the silence remained heavy, The general standing still, unable to move, yet completely aware that the moment had changed everything. The recruits would never fully understand the weight of presence, the legacy of scars. The story of a warrior hidden in plain sight and the memory of a woman who had been cleaning her weapon would echo long after the doors closed, leaving suspense in the air like a pulse waiting for the next revelation.